No, but I would have liked to. I read his Lady Chatterley's Lover on an ocean liner crossing the Atlantic en route to Hollywood in the late 1920s. We had numerous shared interests, I think. I would have liked to have argued with him, travelled with him, driven around the city with him, as we're doing now, or gone to Mexico with him. Well, that might have been more fun. He liked some westerns and wanted Women in Love to be filmed, of course, but he hated Ben-Hur. Remember that he wrote this, quote, "We think a lovely woman must look like Lillian Gish, and a handsome man must look like Valentino. But there's a greater essential beauty in Charlie Chaplin's odd face than there ever was in Valentino's." What insights there are in those sentences. He saw beyond the fuselage of beauty, I would say, into the engine room. He knew that if we see only the clothed surface of beauty, that we're not doing the work of the artist. We're not operating out of time and beyond ideology. Beyond, beneath, above, he was Galileo railing against conformism. And Lawrence held movies responsible for some of the ersatz qualities of what we then were in, the new 20th century. And when I went to film, he says that we see, quote, all the black and white feelings that nobody felt. And he says that people in cinemas underwent, quote, emotions that none of them felt. Like me, he knew that the human heart is epic, that emotions have great amplitude. He wanted to excavate. Look how often he uses the English word naked. He wanted to unclothe his people and their desires. Here's a drawing I did of a scene in his Lady Chatterley's Lover. The man soars above the woman like a great tree, like a thunderous storm cloud. His heel raised, like his whole body's raised. I could have made a great opera with this book. An opera staged in Paris. Can I show you another drawing I did? It's from Lawrence's story, The Prussian Officer. On the left is the aging captain who's frustrated by life's experience and poisoned. In the middle is his young orderly. The orderly's in love with a woman, but the captain's attempting to prevent the love. Angered, the orderly viciously attacks his superior. The result is tragedy, as my drawing of a corpse in the bottom right indicates. Well, in my country, we like stories about youthful rebellion, of refusing to be controlled by the elite. But I was attracted very much to the almost Greek theme in the scenario. This is a tragedy. The older man's fascinated by the younger's vitality, his beauty even. He peers at the epicene orderly and resents him. Time is the thing. Time is the property that the captain cannot control or reverse. Lawrence, I think, didn't know his own mind. Without being aware of it, he wanted to reverse time. He had a professed love of the Italian futurists, their kinesis and fascism. And yet in so much of his writing, he imagines a Rousseauian time before the innovations of the 20th century. Think of his book Sea in Sardinia, in which he grumpily harks after an unspoiled epoch. I like that he contradicts himself, I suppose. I think that he doesn't know what he thinks. They call that repression these days. Repression creates a kind of force, great pressure, and eventually a Baroque explosion. Lawrence's work is just such an explosion, I think. I remember in December 1943, after my breakdown after 90 days filming Ivan in Alma-Ata, I went to rest in the mountains, and there I was utterly absorbed by Lawrence's short stories. I was interested in what you could call the animal epic running through his novellas. It made me think, of all things, of Walt Disney. I found the short stories striking for their abundance of latent action and sheer literary brilliance. Pusa? No, too sedate. They're like people one of Corot's stormy forests, animated by the passions of Courbet. And, if I can say this, I think that my consideration of landscape helps explain Lawrence's. I've written that landscape in fiction is like pathetic fallacy. I call it non-indifferent nature. The landscapes produced by the person, by their psyche. In Lawrence, the countryside seems to spring from within. He was only 44 years old. How terrible for his wife and for us. And think of the times that he lived in, that we lived in, and what he has missed. His novel The Rainbow was published into the world of Verdun and Dada. Then Rutherford split the atom, and Malevich astonished the world with his monochrome crosses and squares. A year later, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was broken into fragments, and new liberties emerged. And then there was Bauhaus, and they murdered Rosa Luxemburg. Lawrence was on the wrong side of some of this, of course. And does he even mention Antonio Gramsci? Did he register the 1921 Hitler Putsch? There's so much that he seemed unaware of. Why was he not shaken by James Joyce's Ulysses? His book England, My England came out in the same year as Mein Kampf, the year before my Potemkin. I found myself in a vanguard. Did he ever? He was a tumult, yes, but his ferocity was Whitman more than Joyce. The year he died, Gandhi began to stir the spirit of India, and Freud wrote Civilization and its Discontents. That could be the subtitle of many of Lawrence's books. Not at all. Lawrence takes us back. I take us forward. No, that's the wrong thing to conclude. Look how well Lawrence understood Paul Cézanne. He knew how to look, as do I. He was an omnivore, as am I. I'm interested in everything. He was interested in most things.